Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for January 31st, 2025. I'm Benji Fisher, sharing my screen and moderating, and also present are Ralph Kohler and Simo Hell. We're going to pick up where we left off last week. We've been looking at issue 3370326. Refine the field descriptions. For the sake of the recording, I know the three of us are all familiar with this. If you edit a content type, say basic page and manage fields. If you add a new field, you start off with this grid of options. And let's say if you look at file upload, let me start with that one today. So first of all, the text on this page is something we could consider, although I think we're focusing more on the next screen where we have two options, in this case, file and image, and it's this help text that distinguishes between the two options and perhaps additional text above or below the options that we want to consider. And we've been discussing this for a few weeks, and we have a spreadsheet here where we've been proposing alternative language. Ralph, Simo, anything else you want to say for the sake of the recording before we dive in?
Nope.
So I think this column C is where we're putting our proposals. Columns B and D, those are your suggested text, Ralph, right?
Yes.
And column A is what's currently there. So last week we talked about references. I think we can copy this entry over, can't we?
Yeah. Right.
So the page title for the reference. Um, Definitely room for improvement, but I think that's already an improvement over what's there. Almost anything would be an improvement over what's there. Um, can we move on to the next, or do you want to ha have any thoughts about improving the text for references?
I think last week we said that we will think about and ideate about more examples for that, but I think it would just hold us back and we should move on for the moment.
I agree. It would be nice to sort of finish off the spreadsheet and create a prototype. And there's always room for improvement. We're getting a thumbs up from Simo. So let's move on. I'm actually going to suggest that we leave media alone. I think we all agree that having media separate here rather than under file upload has problems. And this long help text that has been there for a while, we all agree would be better as the differentiating text if we had the third option for media reference here. But the people who implemented this sort of feel strongly about the way they have it now. I think we'd get a lot of pushback from doing that. So I think we should leave rearranging the options for a later issue and just focus on the actual text because we'll get less pushback that way. We can actually, I think we'll actually make more progress if we do that. Ralph, go ahead.
Um, the only problem I see if I agree that it would hold back everything if we would um, heavily insist on move those three together. But problem is uh, that way, if we leave media as a top level option, that way only this short description is the only thing that is available for outlining the characteristics um, compared to, for example, file upload for images or files, where you have then things like for creating media type or legacy files, configure allowed file extension, and so forth. So it's problematic on many levels from my perspective as well. But I haven't had the time to check the user tests Laurie linked, because I am in line with the points you've made that they might made a few false assumptions as well. I don't know yet, but
And I think I did make that separate issue, didn't I? Um,
yeah, it's on a separate issue where Laurie chimed in.
so I think I made it a sibling issue of this, so it has the same parent. So here's the parent issue, and right here's the issue I created. Add media reference to the same field type group as file and image. So just to control scope and um, make progress without getting into any fights. I think we should leave that alone.
Yep.
Um, do you have any suggestions for improving the text? Because that's what this issue is supposed to focus on, the actual text.
Yeah, on that page for media, we already have where is it? On the other sheet, on the step one field type descriptions, there we already have discussed. And if we go to media,
Israel.
yeah. Oh, I think we haven't discussed that and went with removal. Because the field type description is only in column B is the one the current state.
Right. Field reference media allows uploading and selecting from uploaded media. That's what it says here. Um, so I guess your proposal was to remove it from the top level, as we've been discussing.
Mm.
Um, but again, I think that's
Yeah, out of scope completely. But I just thought back then we came up with a suggestion for media as well, but I was wrong.
okay.
Yeah, let's move back to the other sheet.
Okay, so um, for now, for this issue, we're planning to leave this as it is. Um, is this the description you get? Then you click through. Oh yes, this is the long,
Yeah, it's the
this
same description you have on the file upload second step.
right. So at this point, we're not going to recommend any changes in that. Um, and um, so for this issue, we're also going to have the file uploads contain images and files. Um, so the suggestion here was to rename it to media asset. I think that was in line with the rearranging that we're not going to fight that battle today.
No.
So shall we continue to call it file upload, or do you still think it should be something else?
Um, Personally, just one observation from my personal experience when I first tested that merge request and I was looking for the image, I struggled to find image because file upload hasn't triggered any hunch that I could find image there. So file upload, it doesn't have to be media asset, but still file upload I consider also problematic for describing file and image because it's basically picking up the term file.
Okay, let me throw out an idea. What if we renamed this one to reusable media and this one to media asset?
Oh.
I really think that the key difference between an image media type and a direct image upload is the reusability. Um, and it frustrates me that people aren't aware of that. I'm getting a thumbs up from Ralph. Um, and Thomas has joined us. Go ahead, Thomas. Thomas Howell.
Um, so I think it's an interesting recommendation, and I'm not against it, but trying to think of the way to phrase this quickly. I think that not everyone would think of so the file upload, if I recall correctly, could be anything. Like you could have a .css file if you were storing a bunch of CSS files. You could literally anything that you can store on the file system, though you have to change what extensions you allow. Um, and so media seems artificially restrictive, restrictive. Um, but maybe that's the intent of how Drupal wants to use it. I seem to recall that people do use file upload in a very broad array of use cases. Like if they were using it as some sort of rudimentary document management system and they wanted to allow different types of file uploads. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Um, yeah, Ralph says in suggestions Slack just assets instead of media assets, and that would address the point you just made that it could be anything. But I'd like to point out that yeah, out of the box, the media types we get. This is Umami. I think it's similar in standard audio, document, image. Document can be basically any file, could be a PDF, could be something else. You could certainly create a separate media type for CSS. Um, and there's also the remote video, which um, sticks out. It's different from all the others. Doesn't really belong here. Um, but yeah, certainly we could call it assets instead of file upload or media assets. Um, but I was also thinking of the problem that Ralph pointed out that he had trouble finding the regular image field, and I'm not sure that assets is as good a clue. And using the word media, reusable media, media assets, um, is at least a clue that these are two different options um, that that have some overlap. Thomas, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, I think it comes down to, I guess, someone's experience. Like I have very rarely in my life experienced the word media to mean these things, and media does not to me equate to image. Though to play further upon assets, though there might, I don't know if this is confusing, I think the term that's used most widely is digital assets. And that would include images in my mind.
Okay. Sima, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the problem is we need to pair media and files, because file upload, it's something that it actually describes what it does, and we could use that the text to include a bit more. I mean, it's all about uploading files from the local file system. So for me, images are always files.
Okay.
And I think that's basically that's what you do with those fields. You have some files on your computer or maybe phone, and then you upload those to the server. So that's kind of what it does. But the problem is comparing it with media, because they are not it's not like it's not a choice between those two, because media is about how you use them, and the other one is what you actually do. So it's a bit complicated comparison there, and that's what makes it difficult. So I think for media is reusable. It makes sense, but I'm wondering if media is something that has come up with Drupalism's group.
Thomas, I think you're the one most involved with the Drupalisms group.
Oh,
Can you?
actually, Ralph is even more. So I defer to Ralph. I don't recall talking at length about it. I like I've until later, much later in life, I never used media the way that we use media here. But that doesn't mean that is incorrect. I do the issue I have is that we actually have three things that are kind of interrelated, and that is reference, media, and file upload. And so if you look at them, media is a special instance of referencing media things, whereas reference and upload are more generalized things. So it's there, if I were looking at a Venn diagram, there's overlap between media and file upload, and there's overlap between media and reference.
Sure.
And so I think that, like, I completely, because I was looking at media, because I didn't see reference in the upper right hand corner, and I focused because I looked to the left, upper left first. I looked at media, I looked at file upload, and I was thinking, well, why don't we just call this reference? And then I was like, but there is a reference field. And then I looked over, I was like, oh yeah, there is a reference. So I don't offhand know why I would choose media and not reference, or why I choose media and not file upload, because the other two are verbish, whereas media is nounish.
Right.
I think a lot of this is based on what is like it's kind of a shortcut. But I think it would add to that, like adding media content would make it a little bit more descriptive for me, because it's a form of content, and then it would kind of a little bit tie together with the reference. And there could be a play with the icon so that we could add this kind of a make media have some resemblance to reference, but that's a bit out of scope here. But we could use like a media content would tie it with the description text of reference. And it's also a field where you usually often, in my experience, often you use media fields to create content, including uploading files in that kind of the inline form or something like that. So it's kind of in a way special, but I think it's probably there because it's usually something that people need more than the others.
Hi, and Aaron Mikhail has joined us. Hi, Aaron. I think you've seen this issue before that we're discussing.
Hi. I'm not sure, but I'll pick up as we go.
So we're currently focusing on the labels for media and file upload, and perhaps also reference on this page. And we've talked about how one of the important aspects of media is that it is reusable, whereas a file upload, you typically upload a file to one node, and it is not easy to use it on other nodes. Key aspect of file upload is that you are uploading from your local file system. Although there is an aspect of that with most media as well, not for remote video, but before you can reuse it, you have to create one instance of it, and that is also done by a file upload. I suggested that we change this one to reusable media and this one to media assets. Ralph suggested perhaps just assets here. And I see there's one comment in the chat that I didn't read into the recording. Ralph mentioned that it's a good point that file upload is the only example which is about a task. The rest is about the functionality a field type has. So I think that was in reference to Thomas's comments about reference and media being nouns, file upload being more like a verb. Go ahead, Ralph.
Even one step before, it was more about Simo's point, but yeah. I forgot, reference is technically speaking also a verbish task, while the others are nounish. But one detail I wanted to add, I just went ahead and quickly looked at the tasks in the user test, and the reason maybe because they placed it in the top level was how the only task in the context of images, media, or files was how would you add a new field to attach an image? And if you have media on the top level, that would be the first pick, strictly speaking, and you wouldn't look any further that way.
That's right. And that's a suspicion I had when Larry said that it tested well.
Yeah.
Yeah. If your test is to attach media, and then yes, putting it at the top level is going to test well. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just in regards to like, calling it asset or something else. I think the thing is the file upload is it can be, it could be anything, right? It asset or other words like that feel like to me like a description of a sort of how you might use the file upload. Like it could be, there's no limitations on how it could be used. So, for instance, it could be used for uploading images, but also equally, we've used it for like uploading JavaScript and CSS files and two very different things. So I think it's a tricky one because of how not prescriptive file upload is. It can be used for so many things, and so I almost feel like there is value in describing it as file upload because that is really clear in what it does. But I also see the problem with having media and file upload, and it's like, well, if you're trying to construct a content type, what do you pick here? So I just think that's a really, I don't know, it feels like a hard balancing act, I suppose.
Right. Although I think that asset is also used to refer to CSS and JavaScript files. So I don't see asset as being too restrictive.
I mean, that's true, but I think it's to me that feels like more restrictive language to say an asset, because that feels like something, like something is an asset, but it you might not describe everything as an asset that you could upload. I'm blanking on any good examples, but
Okay, Thomas?
I'm wondering if so for me, what I'm hearing right now today is that the major difference between reference media and file upload, very kind of categorically, is that file upload is not really reusable. So maybe in the description, that's where we call that out, that this is non-reusable. I was trying to think of like single use, one use, or local use. And like to me, what flies in the face of all of this is we have digital asset management systems, DAMs, and those are pretty common. And that's generally how I've heard businesses refer to file uploads. But if it's not reusable, then I'm not really sure digital asset gives the right impression to me. And so asset is a short form of digital asset. So long story short, maybe it's best to leave it as file upload, but work on a slightly better description that enhances the difference between when to use file upload and when to use media.
Okay. Simo makes a quick joke in the chat. The most important asset is the employees. It's something that's often said. Go ahead, Aaron. Aaron, you're muted.
sorry, that was an old hand.
Okay. Um, so shall we leave it as it is for now? Shall we change media to reusable media? Sort of the absence of the word media under file upload is perhaps a little hint towards that. What do you think?
I had a suggestion of adding, making it media content, because, or it could be in the description text mentioned that it's formal content.
So this one, change media to media content?
Yeah. Like so it or in the text, so it could, because reference it's filled to reference other content, and then it would describe media as a form of content.
Anyone else like that idea? Thomas?
Yeah, I actually like that because, at least in context, when I see the word content in Drupal, it's a content, or it used to be a content management system, and there's Drupal CMS. I would think of that as something manageable. Whereas, like, again, the key thing that I've heard today is file uploads are not reusable. And so that non-reusability is the strong, like, when I come to these fields, the confusion that I have is when should I use what? Like, why would I use media if I want to reference something? Like, I want to link to YouTube. Why would I use media and not use reference? So, like, having a name that tells me why I want to use it. And so, media content kind of emphasizes what its point is, that it's a content collection and this is a management system. So, I have to assume there are managed things. I mean, we could also call it managed media, something like that. But
Okay.
media content's good.
Aaron?
Yeah. I think the only thing we have to be careful with the word content is used a lot in Drupal. And so like obviously in the menu and things we just use the word media. And so there is a nice kind of symmetry with how if you look in the menu system, you see media and you go to the media library, you understand that, and then calling the I don't know whether media content could like does that make the user think this is something different, like it's a piece of content, like because we already used the word content to mean something different. So the other thought it had is maybe, and I don't know if this was already mentioned, but just like Thomas, you used the word reusable media. Maybe that's a good name for it. Because that describes what it enables.
I think reusable media was my suggestion. Ralph?
I agree with Aaron's point in regards of the potential. It could at least make the users think if you use media content and you have just media in the sidebar, is it something else or is it the same? So it might be confusing. And I just looked again at the step 1, and we had basically a description for media as well. We came up and it was reference a media type like image, audio, video, or remote. And in combination with reusable media as the label, I think it might work. And if file upload gets something like not reusable, either in the description or in the label on step 1, it might be clearer.
So you're saying we already had something in.
Yeah, I just missed it when you look at, yeah. If you take a look at column E.
Oh, I didn't see that there was a column E.
Yeah,
Okay.
And there we have that one.
Okay.
It was just strike through course in regards of, yeah, removing the media step there at the top level item, but I think it would be useful, in particular in combination with the reusable media label.
Yeah, the original reason why I came up, like I thought about the word content is because if I want to list the media that's on the site, I click on the content, pick the link content, and then it's the last tab on that page is media. So that's how I organize it in my mind. So it's content of type media. And that kind of comes from the how I use the user interface.
But there's also the tab for files. So should we
Yes.
call it file media rather than file upload?
File content. Yeah, that's a bit confusing.
And perhaps instead of file upload, it should just be file, although that disagrees with what we said earlier. I think Simo's point was that, that a key thing about this field is that you are uploading from local file to the server. But it would be consistent just to have the word media, just to have the word file, would be consistent with what we see on the content page. Aaron?
What if we shortened file upload to just upload? Because that might make it more distinct from media, but also perhaps make it slightly clearer in that this is a field that you can upload things. And I think the word upload is probably fairly well understood.
Okay, hadn't thought of that. And that would certainly agree with Simo's point. Get a thumbs up from Simo. Ralph?
Um, I'm not sure in regards of just upload. Then from the point, if I don't know the background information, I would be unsure if it would be my go-to if I look for something like image or file necessarily. But how about to keep it would be a bit of a more lengthy variant, but if you go with, for example, reusable media and instead of file upload, go with non-reusable files. But with files, it's again the problem with images, and if you non-reusable assets, something like that. That way you would have the both opposites, reusable and non-reusable, and it would be clear from the start that way.
Okay, Thomas?
The I guess this is a different question that I have now. I'm trying to understand what the intent we as a community have for these buttons, like because there's overlap and because media is something very specific. uh, when I come to in the past, over all the time that I've worked with Drupal, when I come to adding a field, the challenge I've always had is knowing why I should use one thing over the other. And I'm still struggling with a lot of the suggestions we're making to understand why I should use media over file upload, other than that difference of one is reusable and one isn't. And so when we talk about something like just changing it to upload, like then I would automatically think anything I want to upload, including images, should go always into file upload, which would defeat the purpose, because I would believe as a management system, we want people to use media for all of the media types media supports, and you would only use file upload in certain more specific but also general use cases. Like, why would I want to put an image in file upload? But if I have that called just upload, it front loads for me mentally the action of I want to put everything, including images, into file upload, and that to me would defeat the purpose.
Okay, so is there a specific suggestion there, or
It's I'm not fond, like I'm not fond of calling it just upload or uploads or just file, because I'm still struggling to see why I I believe we want people to use media first, so I would do something or make a choice that emphasizes pick media for media types. And then if you need to, if you have a special use case, then you would put images in file upload. And that's where things like when you said reusable media, like that, if I'm thinking something reusable, that makes a strong argument for, if I've got an image file, why I should use media rather than upload for that same image file.
okay, Aaron?
So, I had an idea that's what you might call a bit of outside of the box, but pressed right up against the box kind of thinking. Um, what what I'm thinking is that like this screen, this sort of wizard style was introduced partly because the user might know what they want to achieve, but they might not know what field type will get them there. Now, to sort of illustrate what I'm saying, Benji, if you wouldn't mind just clicking on one of the ones that brings up, I'm thinking like probably oh, not file upload, maybe what is it like, um, uh, probably like text or something, like plain text, I think
Okay.
is. If you go to the, do you get a second? Yeah. So on this screen, when you select plain text, you get extra options that give you more, allow you to give you, there's more space here for more information. Um, and if you go back, we'll notice that when you select reference, you also have media within reference.
Yes, Only if you first choose other. Yeah.
Ah, okay, that's fair. But you can still, my point is you can still get to media by
Yeah.
going to reference. So what I'm getting to is that I feel like the things people are talking about is what if we restructured this slightly so that we still have media and we still have file and reference, but when you select media and file, you then get to a second screen that gives you sort of these more options. One of them could be reusable media, and then we could explain under that this would allow you to select media types from the media library, etc., and can help you understand why you would use that one. And then if you selected, say, the other option could be non-reusable
Yeah. Aaron,
file. Yeah.
I think you're preaching to the converted here. I think everyone on this meeting agrees that we should have, instead of having media at the top level, we should have it as another option under here. But I think we said at the start of the meeting before you joined that we're not going to fight that battle as part of this issue. We have a separate issue to deal with that question, and we are getting a lot of pushback on that.
Yeah, I think that's the problem though. Like this isn't gonna what we're talking about here. I'm not convinced we're gonna solve all these challenges just by coming out with new labels for like media or file. And I'm also not suggesting that we take media and move it under one. What I'm suggesting is that we keep both media and file, because at that point you know, as a user, you might know, okay, I've got a media item or I've got a file and I want to be able to upload that. But then what the next screen allows us to do is to give that, is to help you pick the right field type that will do what you want. So on the second screen, that's what I'm saying, like on the second screen, it would be options like reusable and non-reusable, words that have been used a lot on this call, because that is fundamentally the thing that is the difference between why you would use these two fields. One's reusable, one isn't. And so that's why I feel like, ultimately, whether you select one, you actually probably would get to the same screen. But the challenge is like describing, and I suppose you could even combine media and file into like media and file at that point by using the second screen. But yeah, I feel like I feel like we're not going to come up with perfect names that communicate all of the things that we've been talking about. That's my feeling.
Right, right. So the goal isn't to solve all the problems. The goal is to make incremental progress by changing the labels. So if we can make a little improvement here, let's do that. And um, and let's some other time return to the issue where we actually rearrange things.
Mm.
Ralph?
Just one question for clarification. Aaron would be, and then one remark. But Aaron, would your suggestion be basically have media on the top level as a field type option, but at the same time, if you go under file upload as well as under reference, have media there as well? So it basically you have 3 times to access it?
Yeah, something like that, because I mean, it might be that at that point, basically what I'm saying, imagine either we keep media and file as separate ones or we combine them. And regardless of which one you pick, you get to the same screen that asks you, do you want this to be reusable? Do you want this to be non-reusable? Because then that I think that's a much better way of guiding the user to like figure out by asking them, we can pick the right field type. And that's why I also asked Benji to go onto the second screen at first, because you can see on that screen there's much more space for us to provide like the kinds of nuance and description. Like, okay, if you select reusable, you'll be, files will be uploaded to the media library and they can be used in other places. So that's kind of why I'm leaning in that direction.
So you're actually suggesting that it doesn't matter which of these we choose. Either
Yeah.
way, we click continue and we see all 3 options.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Okay.
And just one addition and a remark, as what I've already wrote in the chat, which I consider an important differentiator, if I remember correctly, is the point that if you're using media, then you have a security concern. Basically, those media items are basically accessible and are not protected as, for example, a file upload or image upload. That is a detail Fana Proxima once mentioned on Slack or on a podcast. I'm not sure where it was.
Specifically, the remote video option, which uses OEmbed, has some security issues, and probably accessibility issues as well. But other than that media type, right? And I have that in this tab over here. Remote video is kind of special that way. For any other media type, I don't think there are any security or
No, I mean, it's not
accessibility
really
differences.
per se a security issue, but basically the assets are accessible if you have a image media type, for example. That image that is referenced as a media is accessible. While if you have a file that is not accessible or is secured in a certain way.
I'm not familiar with that.
I think I have to search for it and
Okay.
post it later.
Thomas?
We may have already discussed this in a prior meeting, but the question I asked earlier about intention, one of the reasons I was asking is, would it help simply to move media up higher in the stack? Like, if media were first and I had an image, that would be the first thing I clicked on. Putting it down lower causes me to deprioritize it as something that I would want to do. So I just don't know if putting media rather than having it next to file upload, putting it higher up as one of the first three, like it could be the first one, it could be plain text, formatted text, and then media. But doing something like that might change people's perception of it without having to change labels or change wording of the description.
So just to control scope, I would like to focus just on the text, and that's moving it around on the page is less of a change than the other things we've discussed. But I'd still like to focus on the text for this issue. So we have less than 10 minutes left in this meeting. Thomas?
Based upon our conversation, I would just say then that I don't see value in changing either name because nothing I've heard has been convincing enough that I think that changing the names themselves is going to fix the problem. I think that if we wanted to make changes, it would be in the description.
Okay. And you got a thumbs up from Aaron. So let's leave that as it is for now. Also got a thumbs up from Ralph. And I think going back to the spreadsheet and tab 2, I think we are just going to leave this as it is for now. We'll keep file upload as file upload. So let's look at this screen. So to distinguish between these two options, file, technically, I think file, the only difference between these is that image also stores the width and a height in the database. And general file, of course, does not. Other than that, you could store an image file just as a file. But go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to add something I forgot to mention because something Thomas asked, just so we're clear, because I realize it might not be obvious, but the reason sometimes the reason you definitely would want to use file over, or in this case, image over a media type is if you were actually building a media type, because for instance, if you say the image media type is just a construction using file upload and some other fields. So I just wanted to add that just in case it wasn't obvious, just to help clarify for some people, if everybody wasn't aware of that.
Okay, thanks. I agree with that. Simo?
One thing I think we could say for uploading any files and for uploading image files, so that it would kind of give the impression, like explain that images are also files, like in this context. But also one thing that's kind of important sometimes is that images have image styles, and for instance, they can be used to render thumbnails at least, and sometimes much more. And in that case, if for very, very large images, it's not recommendable to use image field, because then you can run out of PHP memory. This is something I've been working this week actually, so that kind of it's also that image uploads are processed for image styles, so that's also something.
Okay. I've never run into that problem, but I can see how it could be an issue.
So
Either one lets you specify a maximum upload size. I'm sorry, did someone else want to say something? So Ralph had some suggestions here. For creating media type or legacy files created before installing media module.
It's those suggestions basically pick up the help text on the media as well as on the image page to make those obsolete sort of. And
So you're incorporating this text into
parts of the text and adding additional, and using other details from the description before.
Okay, so that's really in the context of having the third option on this page, which we're not planning to do as part of this issue. So I think we can start by saying that we are going to keep these two unless someone disagrees. And there's a fair amount of duplication here. We already have this paragraph down here, which is trying to describe the difference between media and file. And so that makes it awkward to also have the common features of these two fields. Is it worth tweaking that first line for uploading files, for uploading images? You could say for uploading any files to avoid the idea that you can't use this for an image field. For uploading image files, is that any clearer than uploading images? Probably not. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks. I guess a couple of my suggestions. One is just, as you're talking there, I was thinking, what if we changed file to, well, I guess what if we moved image first and then changed file to something like all other file types? Just thinking if in the event, like, I don't know, there's a special kind of video field, you know, the upload field that gets added, right? That could make it slightly clearer that like, okay, I've got a specialized field type here for image, and then I've got a field type here for everything else. That might help distinguish them slightly. The other idea I had first came to mind when I saw this was, oh, what if we just added like the word non-reusable here? But then that could also be confusing if you're building a media type, and I'm thinking, so if I use this, I can't reuse the media type, you know, so like, I don't know, maybe that opens a weird can of worms.
Okay, well, I'm afraid we're about at the end of the hour. This writing this text is challenging. And maybe we'll take a break from it next week and come back again. Obviously, we're not finished yet. But thanks all for the conversation, for all the ideas, and hope to see you again next week.
Thanks, Benji. Sorry it's been a frustrating one, but really appreciate it.
Good point. Well put. All right. Bye.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks, Rob.
bye.